The first step does not have to be a large investment of money or a large investment of time. Just start with spending 3 hours reading a book, understanding someone's story. The critical part about being a business owner is that, to me, it's a 21st century version of the American dream because you have autonomy. You can run the business as you see fit, assuming that you pay off your debt, right? The most important thing, which is, to me, a silver bullet or a confounding driver, one might say, of what your success is going to be, is how well you understand yourself, how well you understand your own avatar, and how well placed you are in that situation. Lonely owner syndrome is a real thing. And in my experience, peer groups saved me from myself. Happiness in life is driven by relationships, right? And I tend to believe that successful relationships come from being selfless and helping other people.
Climbing up, there's a struggle, tension in the air. But the underdog prevails, we here to declare. To the top or the mountain where champions stand. Failures can't break us, we taking command. Yeah, it's a journey, climb to the peak. Scaling businesses, who it ain't for the weak. Growth is the game, we play it real tall. From the bottom to the summit, we rise, never fall. Interview the legends, success stories told. Risepreneurs, hearts made of gold. Strategies unfold, in the struggle grace. Hardship and challenges, yeah, we still embrace.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Risepreneur Show, a podcast dedicated to all the entrepreneurs and business owners out there who's looking to grow, scale their businesses, and ultimately exit. Today, we have a guest. His name is Reid Tileston. He is a serial entrepreneur himself, an author, a keynote speaker. He's also an adjunct professor teaching entrepreneurship through acquisition. And the book that he wrote is Grit It Done. It's all about get out there and make it happen. I would love to pick his brain today and see how he can contribute to what we're doing as entrepreneurs. Reid, say hi.
Hello, and thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Before we go into multiple exits that you had and go through your journey, can you share a little bit about your childhood, how you came across into the idea of becoming an entrepreneur?
I think an entrepreneur is an interesting term, right? Because an entrepreneur, to me, just means someone who's always willing to maximize return while mitigating risk as much as possible. So entrepreneurs can be business owners. Entrepreneurs can be individuals that found startups. Entrepreneurs can be husbands. They can be wives. They can be friends. It's really the entrepreneurial mindset that I think is the key. So what I think of myself as is an entrepreneurial business owner, right? I take the entrepreneurial skill set and I simply apply it to businesses that I own. The way that I got into it, to answer your question directly, is that I grew up in San Francisco, about 15 minutes from the airport. And my older brother, when he got his driver's license, my parents said, hey, his name is Trevor, we want you to drive us to the airport as part of your weekly allowance. And he said, cool, I'll do it. So he did it with my parents. And then he started doing it with my parents' friends, and they paid him for it. And he created this kind of pre-Uber side business taking people to the airport. And this was back in 1998, 1999. I thought this was pretty cool. So he graduated, went to college. I got my driver's license. So I took over his clientele, and then I simply added my own friends' parents. I added to it, and I was able to grow that business, make some good money as I was in high school as well. And that taught me the value of taking something that already exists and applying the entrepreneurial mindset to that, as opposed to trying to start something from scratch. He'd validated the business by showing it worked, showing you could make more money. I just expanded it. And that's where I came across the idea of entrepreneurship through acquisition, was when I was in high school, driving people to the San Francisco International Airport.
You never came across ideas of startups from the get-go. You were aware that it would be much easier to take something that already exists and grow it from there.
Listen, private equity has been doing this since the beginning of private equity, right? You take something that exists and then you apply better systems, better people, better processes, and grow it. Does starting something from scratch cross my mind? Yeah, absolutely. Listen, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's a great path. I think the critical part of this process is for people to understand the assessment. And that's chapter 1 in the book that I wrote, Grit It Done. It's basically a step-by-step for how to acquire, grow, and run a Main Street business, which I've been doing for 16 years, number of successful exits. Get it at grititdone.com or on Amazon. With that said, step 1 is assessment. So you understand, do you actually want to be a business owner? And if you want to be a business owner, do you want to be someone that starts something, or do you want to be someone that acquires something? How much money do you want to make? Are you open to utilizing a personal guarantee as part of this? Ask these questions on the front end. If one does that, it can save a lot of stress, a lot of wasted money, and most importantly, I would ask you, what's the most important commodity in life?
Time.
Time, exactly, time. So my guidance is do the assessment on the front end, and then the back end will become much more clear. It's in the book. I talk about a lot of people that I teach do this, so do yourself a favor, think through it before you delve into it.
For sure. I can attest to it. I did not have that background and did not have an opportunity to be exposed to some assessments. It kind of life naturally guided me through my journey. And I've been involved in many startups, and every time there was a failure, and majority of them did fail, you basically erasing a year, 2, 3 from your life. You did walk away from all that experience, but still, in many cases, it was a repeat of definition of insanity comes to mind, right? Doing the same thing, expecting different results. I was just not equipped with everything that I needed in order for the opportunity to go somewhere. I would always take the back stand, the back office part of things, right? So yeah, starting something and going through it the proper way, getting some assessments in place to see exactly what you're getting yourself into would be tremendous help. But even then,
and by the way, take that saying that you just said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting different results. People say that. Yeah, people say that exactly in the negative context. I choose to look at that in more of a positive context. If you find something that works and you like the result, then keep on doing it, right? It's like the foundation of a good habit as well. Yes. And that's a key tenet to entrepreneurship through acquisition, is that you're buying something that works, right? And there's also the middle gap between starting something from scratch and buying something that exists, and that is buying into a franchise system. Buying into franchise systems are great ways because, again, you're taking a concept, at least for the right franchise system, that works. And in doing that, you're able to hit on that key tenet of being an entrepreneur, which is that you seek to maximize reward while mitigating risk as much as possible.
Yeah, risk is the key here. And that you answered my next question is for someone who does not really know business that well.
Woohoo, good job.
You foresaw it. Where would you start, right? And in your case, that's how you started. You went into Anytime Fitness franchise model.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is a starting point with it is that spend 3 hours and read the book that I wrote about this, because what ends up happening is that it's all about taking the first step, right? And the first step does not have to be a large investment of money or a large investment of time. Just start with spending 3 hours reading a book, understanding someone's story, right? Maybe the next step is then listening to your podcast, right? Maybe the next step after that is that, hey, I'm going to go attend like a weekend workshop that somebody puts on or join a community. It's iterative. That's the critical part. So I encourage people to answer your question directly, not to say, you got to start in franchising, or you don't start in franchising, buy your own business, or no, start with starting something up, right? Or go to business school. It's about step-by-step intentional action. And it's about figuring out what the next step in this 1,000-mile journey is. So I would tell you, read the book that I wrote, because it's the whole reason that I wrote it, to help people go down this journey, and then see where that takes you, right? Then after that, see where that takes you. And then during that process, very well might decide, this whole business ownership thing is really hard. I don't want to do this. I want to keep I'll say the average American, keep my $70,000 a year position, because this is just not for me. So just take that step by step. Otherwise, I think what tends to happen is it's easy to get overwhelmed when you start thinking about something that's really 30 steps down the way. Just focus on what that next critical thing is.
Well said. So, and on that, I am also replaying my life story, how much of my life would be different if I would actually do that and not just jump, let's go figure out and It
Well,
is what it is.
that makes two of us here, right? Easier said than done. But the fun thing about having conversations like this, and the fun thing about writing a book and teaching, is that yeah, I made a lot of these mistakes, and they've cost me time, they've cost me money, they've cost me a lot of stress. But the critical part is that you can learn from my experience. And again, creativedone.com, buy the book, check it out. You can learn from my experience, and also what I do now is listening to someone like your podcast, you can learn from other people's experiences as well, and then avoid the same mistakes that we made. Because I can tell you from my heart, I don't want you to have to go through some of the unprofitable things that I've done in my life, right? I want to show you how to avoid that. Then you can make other mistakes and then teach people how to avoid those. And then boom, the world will get better and we'll all keep on moving forward.
Yeah. And it's also like to separate here, your book is from someone who had the experience and wrote this, right? So it's not just some concept, some collection of thoughts put together. This is a practical guidance, practical pain that someone experienced. And it's your choice if you want to go experience it or not. Because at the end of the day, I believe most people will still try to learn through experience versus learning on somebody else's mistakes.
If you can figure out how to learn through someone else's mistakes effectively, let me know how, because my best lessons in life come from my own experience. Unfortunately, I want to learn from other people. It's an area of improvement for me. And you hit something that's critically important is I have a lot of these conversations with people that want to buy businesses or business owners that want to grow. I do a lot of this stuff. And what I can tell you is critical is that a lot of what I think is a gap in the literature is that people can read a framework of how to do this and look at how sexy it can be on paper. But unless people know someone that's been a business owner, maybe their parents they were married to someone, they had a good friend, or they've actually worked in a small business at the level where they saw what the owner's lifestyle was like, they don't necessarily know what it's like. And what sounds good in a framework is much different in person. So I just thought it'd be really fun to write a book that's all the frameworks, those are there for sure. But each framework is coupled with a personal experience that I had with it and how I actually applied that framework and how I actually learned it. And sometimes I'll reference what other people did, but I try to do it as much as possible from my own experience, because running these businesses, it's hard. There's even ones that, and I've been lucky enough to be successful at what I've done. It's hard. Every day is a quagmire. You're neck deep with people, you're neck deep with operations, you're neck deep in things you can't control. And every day is like getting kicked in the groin basically numerous times, right? And I think it's important that it's easier for people to overlook that, I think, really in the process. So yeah, I totally wanted to write a book that was frameworks coupled with the personal stories so that people can decide if this is some route that they want to go down. And if they don't, awesome. Save the time and the money of not going down this route and focus on where your real goal in life is, whatever that is.
Just add something to like what I like about what you're doing right now, teaching entrepreneurship through acquisitions. This is something only I discovered last year, the world of acquisitions. Prior to that, it was a business consultant for some time. So yeah, operations, all other aspects of business, pretty much I'm familiar with. But when I discovered acquisitions, like, wow, how come nobody teaches about that? How come we do not know this from the get-go? So when I would start the business, I would right away first think about the exit. I would look at it already as a seller of the business and start positioning everything and also be like mindful of what buyers would be looking for, right? So it's a completely different intention now when you're building your business. It's not just something that you're growing. You know that ultimately you will exit, and how you're going to exit, what that would look like. Everything becomes so intentional.
Yeah, absolutely. And I validate everything that you say there, begin with the end in mind, and two nuances to it. One is that think about building a house, right? How many people build houses from scratch versus buying existing ones? So the idea of acquisition is actually pretty well ingrained in your life. People don't always think about it that way. And secondly, in the case of being a business owner where you actually control the business, right? It's important to remember that in the case where you actually control the business, I totally forgot where I was going with that thought, but it'll come back to me. Oh yeah, you can do whatever you want with it. If you want to grow it, great. If you don't want to grow it, great. If you want to make it a lifestyle business, great. If you want to maximize value and maximize value and sell it to a strategic or a private equity firm, great. Or a financial buyer, great. If you don't want to maximize profit and just pay your people more, great. The critical part about being a business owner is that, to me, it's a 21st century version of the American dream. because you have autonomy. You can run the business as you see fit, assuming that you pay off your debt, right? Secondly, is that, at least for me, some of the best, most fulfilling relationships I've had in my life have come from people that I have met in the businesses that I've owned. Oftentimes they work for me. I talk about a couple of them in the book. One of them, I was at a coffee shop in Northern California. I was opening a fitness center in town, and this lady came up to me and she awkwardly grabbed my bicep like that. And she was like, "Hey, are you the guy who's opening up the fitness center in town?" And I said, "Yes, I am, as a matter of fact." And that literally led to somebody. She ended up running that club for me for the better part of 12 years. It was a top performer in that franchise system I was in. And it's a life-changing relationship for me. And it even transgressed the business. So the relationships are amazing. And also outside of that, as a business owner, I think that we get the pleasure of seeing how the sausage of our country is made, which, to me, inspires me to be a more civic-minded individual. So autonomy, relationships, a view of what good government can look like, I think it's something that everyone should consider at some point in their life.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for sharing that. When I was looking at the acquisitions, I was looking to buy a business, and that's what you also described on some of the podcasts. Judd. I found that most of the businesses, they're not sellable. Right, and statistics are 4 out of 5 businesses, small businesses, never get sold. Also, statistics that 50 or more % fail during due diligence. The financial statements that I looked for over 50 businesses, none of them were in order. And also over 70% of businesses regret, right, selling in the first year. So that kind of inspired me to start looking into this at much closer pace. So can we, the rest of the show, talk about how you got it to the point where you decided to buy additional, and at what time you started to exit some of those, and what you learned along the way? So
yeah, go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, just the high-level points that for people to be aware. One of the things I can also relate that when you develop relationships like this and people follow you, when you acquire a new business, like in my case, I have ex-teammates come with me because we worked so well together in the past. I do not have that many years of relationship, but I foresee that we would have ultimately get to a stronger place and have that many years as well. So can we go to that Anytime Fitness? How did you acquire that? How old were there? I think you were in your early 20s, right?
Yeah, it's all about who you know in life. I was in my early 20s, had $100,000 in the bank because I'd worked in finance from a bit. I took an unpaid internship at UC. I took an unpaid internship and I flipped it into a full-time job at a finance firm in San Francisco, doing secondary venture capital and private equity. I was out at San Francisco's second oldest pub with 2 individuals that worked in private equity. They were looking at franchisor concepts to acquire. They eventually acquired a food service one. They also looked at Anytime Fitness and they were like, "Wow, these fitness concept does pretty well. This would be an interesting endeavor." And long story short, that got me set off on the world of small business. Now, what I talk about in the book, Grit It Done, you can get it at grititdone.com or on Amazon. There's 4 avatars. Avatar 1 is an employee, right? We all know what employees are. They are the backbone of the economy. The good ones get promoted, the bad ones find a door. Second, you have entrepreneurial employees, equity employees. I would define that as being a CEO of a company. It's someone that works on the business, not in the business, and they usually have meaningful equity upside, but they don't control the business. They're not the owner. Third avatar is you have a business owner. Business owners are great. I spent a lot of years as one. Oftentimes the business owns them more than they own the business. They work in the business, not on the business. Then you have model number 4, which is entrepreneurial business ownership. That is where you own the business, but you work on the business and not in the business. And that is the most critical place to be. So with the first club, I had 2 backers, right? So I was an equity employee. And I go through the details of this in the book, which grititdone.com, buy it on Amazon, check it out. The first club didn't do exceptionally well. And I was an equity employee. I had 2 financial backers. I worked very hard to get the club, mainly by dressing up in a purple superhero suit and knocking on doors in the 110-degree Sacramento heat. I managed to get the club to make a couple $1,000s a month. And I like my investors. My heart's out to them. And we made a little bit of money off the endeavor. Not a good investment. It did fine. With that said, though, it was during that summer, this was 2008, middle of the financial crisis, that I was like, I'm going to be the one who's donning the purple superhero suit in the Sacramento summertime heat. I want to be able to own the upside of what I do, and I want to control my destiny. And that's when I had my identity shift from being an equity employee to being a business owner. So I'm going to harken back to something that I said earlier in the process of this, because I think it's really important. You can think about what kind of industry you want to be in. You can think about what kind of company you want to buy. You can think about what makes a good company, makes a bad company. Let's talk about the frameworks of Double Diamond, and we'll get there. But the most important thing, which is to me a silver bullet or a confounding driver, one might say, of what your success is going to be, is how well you understand yourself, how well you understand your own avatar, and how well placed you are in that situation. Because if you put somebody who's an employee, even in a really good, company as an owner, it's just not going to work out, right? If you put someone who's an equity employee, who has the avatar of a business owner as an equity employee, it's just not going to work out. So while it may not be 100% possible to know where you fit in the world without actually experiencing it, it's a good use of time to think through that in good detail. So that's, again, I'll harken back to that. Second thing, it's in the book. It's a framework I call the Double Diamond. It lists the criteria that I have successfully used to buy businesses over the years. I've used it, others used it. Customer concentration, recurring revenue, fragmented customer base, the team, et cetera, et cetera. You can access it at grittitdone.com for free. You can find it in the book as well. I think it's critical to have a framework. I like my framework. It works for me, but it doesn't have to work for you. The critical part is that you have a framework, and do not just have you only look at it, right? With a framework, it's critical that you have other people that that you trust, and that are sophisticated enough to know how to use one of these things, give you, run it through the framework as well, and give you feedback on it, because that way you'll help to minimize what some of your biases are. So 2 key takeaways, right? 1, assessment, know your avatar. 2nd, have a framework and run it by other people.
And I like that also about the 4 avatars. Uh, that's a very important one. Who you partner with, who you bring into your team to assist you, because that could also jeopardize everything overnight. Wrong decisions and commitments and so on. Yeah, interesting.
And you don't have to listen to them, right? You might say this is the best opportunity ever. Everyone else might say, you have no idea what you're talking about, man. You're going to lose your shirt on this one. And you can totally ignore them, and that's great. But even if you do ignore them, what ends up happening is that the advice that they give provides a map of the minefield ahead. So it's like, oh, I didn't even think about that risk. It really is a risk. I'm still going to do it, but now I'm not going to lose my leg on that one, right? So having people around and listening to that advice is just critical when it comes to actually operating as well, even if you don't actually follow the guidance to walk away from something.
So what did you do with that first location? Did you exit? And how did you proceed once you realized that you need to be a business owner and got your criteria down? What did you
In
get?
that case, eventually sold that club, but I went off and I opened other clubs on my own, and I was a multi-unit owner operator, that club being one of them. It certainly was not a top performer, but yeah, I'm too hard on it. The club did fine. It was cash flow positive. It spit off cash. It just wasn't a 10x return. I'll say that. But it laid the groundwork for learning the lessons that led to a lot more success going forward. And eventually sold that club after about 6 years of being open.
Okay, so what was your takeaway when you sold it? Meaning, I like the space. I'm gonna get into it again, or I need something bigger. I need something.
The takeaway is that at that point in my life, I was a multi-unit club owner operator. So I was making pretty good money, and businesses for the most part ran themselves. I was just a little bit bored and lonely, to be honest. So I sold all except one of the fitness clubs, and I decided to go to business school at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. And the key takeaway for that is that one thing, which is in the book, Power of Peer Groups, it's critical in both the searching for a business process and critical in the actual operating to have the right peer groups around. Now with the franchisor, I had the franchise system, which was great, but I didn't have a group of other business owners. And being a business owner, it's lonely at the top, right? To be clear, it's lonely at the top. So in later endeavors, I always made a point to join business owner operator peer groups. And my guidance and coaching to people is that it's critical in this process while you're searching to be in a peer group. And it's critical in this process while you're operating to be in maybe not even one, but even two peer groups. Because what I call lonely owner syndrome is a real thing. And in my experience, peer groups saved me from myself. It's as simple as that. I talked about the importance of having people to review your investment framework in the case of the double diamond, but the same thing applies with everyday operational challenges. So listen, I believe in the saying, grit it done, right? I named my book that. You can do whatever you want to. I don't know why anybody would possibly want to either search for a business alone or operate a business alone. At the very least, misery loves company. And one story is that I sell an industrial services business. And again, this story is in the book. You can get it at grititdone.com. The book is called Grit It Done, or you can get it on Amazon. I had a team member. This team member is one who I had invested a lot in over the years, both on a professional level and a personal level. And I thought he was a very critical part to the business going forward. When I had the business positioned for sale for what was going to be life-changing wealth generation for me, it's going to be life-changing wealth generation for all the team members, because this deal was structured to pay them life-changing retention bonuses, including this individual in question. During this time, and this is neck deep in the process where the buyer is doing diligence and we're getting close to the finish line, this team member who I had invested a lot in decided to leave. And he left basically he no-showed, right? And this was a huge deal. To me, it was devastating. To the business, it was a material negative impact, right?
So he was one of the key people for the deal to happen?
He was an important member of the, so to answer that question, I had invested in him on an emotional level. His importance to the business, he mattered, let's be clear, but he mattered 20 times more to me on an emotional level than he did to the material aspect of the business, right? The solution is simple. Hire someone, you, Reid, because you work on the business, not in the business, can do the role that he is doing for the time being. You can do it, other people can help with it, that's fine. And eventually hire a replacement, no big deal. It's a solvable problem, right? But to me, it wasn't about rational thinking, it was about emotional thinking. I was emotionally fraught by the fact this guy had abandoned me at a bad time, but it was my peer group that said exactly that. Tileston, okay, it sucks you left. It is really not that big a deal. Like, hire a replacement, the deal is going to move forward. It's like not that big a deal. And I was like, no, it really is. They're like, it's not. Like, follow your own advice. Because I've been saying grit it done for a long time. Even before I wrote the book, they're like, follow your advice, like grit it done, hire a replacement, get the deal closed. And it was tough love, but it's exactly what I wanted, what I needed to hear. And I heard that from people that knew me well. We meet consistently. We've done the deep vulnerability work. So they know me, they know my personality type, they know my business, they know the challenges I face. And of course, that's what I did, right? I got over it. I hired a replacement who ended up being a great fit, closed the deal, have my life generate, made my millions of dollars, paid the retention bonuses, transaction went through, buyer was super happy, all that good stuff, right? But it was the peer groups that allowed me to achieve that outcome. Otherwise, I would have been more in my head about it, and I can't say what exactly would have happened. So peer groups empower.
Yeah. So that peer group, they were like your mentors, coaches, or it's somebody you just did business with? How did you put together a peer group?
I mean, there's it's a peer group that I joined. In this case, it was Entrepreneurs Organization, EO.
Oh, EO organization. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm a member of EO, I'm a member of others. There's countless ones out there. There's no right. I mean, hey, EO works for me, right? EO doesn't work for everybody. There's no right one. There's no wrong one. The issue is that my guidance to people, which I talk about in the book, is you diligence your peer groups as much as you diligence a business, as much as you diligence, your potential romantic partner, right? There's no right one, there's no wrong one, but there's a right fit for certain people. So talk to a bunch, experiment with them, and just, my guidance is like, find the one that just feels gut level right to you, and then join that one. And then the relationships, for me, right? For others that I work with in the space that I see can end up being just transformational and life-changing because you're doing that deep vulnerability work. But the guidance I would give is, and I'm someone that I like pain, I like doing hard things, I like challenges, but unless you like a mental challenge of being lonely while you're searching or operating, I just see no reason to not be a part of a peer group. The money is well worth it, in my opinion.
Is that happen in your industrial cleaning business?
It's happened in every single business that I've been.
No,
Oh,
the incident with the
yeah. I outline more of the fun details in the book. The details make that story come alive. So, but again, I want to hit on a critical point that you said is that people that are looking at going down the route of business ownership, I think it's just critical to understand what it's actually like to run a business, because that will make you understand if you want to do it. And secondly, if you decide you still want to do it, which obviously I'm a proponent of, it will allow you to, again, have a roadmap for what some of the landmines you're going to hit are, and it will allow you to use the strategies to mitigate what those risks are. So for example, I told that story. I always wonder what that experience would have been like if I wasn't a part of that peer group. Hey, maybe it would have worked out better, right? Maybe, who knows, right? But I don't think that's the case. So again, you read a book like mine, or you talk to people like me, you're going to get experience shares that are going to help you navigate mistakes that, we've either made or we've been lucky enough to avoid making.
And of course, that positions you to prevent it from happening again in the future. So yeah, interesting.
Or at least only making the mistake half as bad as I made it before, right?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I do things anyway, even though I know what the outcome will be, but then at least I know I'm already expecting this as an outcome, so it doesn't hurt as much. Okay, I knew this individual might at the end do this, and I should have listened to my gut, but you know what? It is what it is. I knew it, and I went with it intentionally, and it is what it is. So what was the experience like going back? Not going back, you went to educate yourself. And you've been already experiencing a business. You were the operator of multi-unit. I like how open-minded you are to go and try. So what was the logic behind going and trying to educate yourself through that vehicle versus I already have my base, let me just hire a coach, a mentor, and expand on that way?
Yeah, I very well could have. And if I had been in a peer group, my peer group, or a different peer group, my peer group might have been like, why do you want to go back to go to business school? So that's the power of peer groups, is to ask those questions in real time. Because there's no right, there's no wrong answer. But yeah, I didn't think that there were any amazing, because the later clubs that I opened were top 1% to 2% performers. And the system had thousands of clubs. So it's not like that's top 1% of 10 clubs, right? Top 1%, a big system. But yeah, I didn't think that there were many 1% to 2% club locations available in the system, markets I really loved. But I definitely could have gotten some that would have been fine clubs, and I could have probably opened a lot more. But at that point, I just want to try something new, want to meet some new people, and want to expand my horizons. And ironically, I did it. It's funny because I do the exact same thing now. I sold the industrial services business, and now I'm going back and I'm doing a PhD on entrepreneurship through acquisition as well, which I'll have done in a year and a half. So I've always kind of taken the angle of doing this and then also understanding it from an academic and from a research standpoint. Then also, of course, writing a book about it from a practitioner standpoint. And I also invest, I invest, right? I use my own money to invest in people that want to buy businesses and go down this path. I get paid to serve on boards for companies that I invest in, or some I invest in, some I don't, but I get paid board member. So I have this small business world from every single angle. And I like doing that because it just means that while someone might understand it from an operational standpoint because they do it, that's awesome, that's cool. While someone might understand it from a research standpoint, that's awesome too, right? They might understand it from a investment standpoint, that's cool. I kind of get it from every standpoint, right? Which is super fun for me to kind of see it all come together. So that's how I've kind of found my current niche. But I don't currently own and operate a business, aside from the branding stuff that I have an LLC, right? But I don't consider myself a business owner. And I miss it. I miss being in the trenches, kind of operating on a day-to-day basis. And part of me also feels slightly hypocritical because I teach people how to do this stuff now, even though I'm not the one in the owner, CEO chair and everything like that. So I tell my students, I'm like, listen, you need to go out and do some really cool stuff. so I can invite you back to lecture in class, with your success story or your failure story. Those are actually more fun to hear. And I'm living vicariously through you, so go out and do good stuff. But I always get fired up when I talk to business owners and entrepreneurs to, get back out there and do that. But I think that there is benefit to every avatar that I just walk through. I think it's just very cool to be able to delve in each one of those.
I see. So you're positioning yourself more to be exposed to a variety of businesses and give input or get insights at a different point, different level, and you find it more fulfilling that way.
I mean, yeah, fulfillment in life, to me, it's really simple. Hey, Harvard happiness study, right? Happiness in life is driven by relationships, right? And I tend to believe that successful relationships come from being selfless and helping other people. So I just simply look at my life in a really simple way. I try to help as many people as I possibly can in the ways that I have a skill set to do. So that's how I fundamentally think about it. I can help business owners by doing research. I can help teach people by telling my story and sharing my frameworks. And sometimes I can help people by giving them money that they need to go do something like this, right? And give a good return on investment. So I apologize, I'm coughing. So yeah, I think about the ways that I can help people the most.
Yeah. Can you take us to that place where you acquired that business and actually exited at 10x? What was in place when you got it? What did you have to put in place in order for you to have that successful exit?
Yeah, I mean, the critical part, and so one, I would tell people to, again, read the book, Grit It Done, grititdone.com. You can get it on Amazon. I go through more of the details, some of the details and the stories of that business in there. Critical part to it, which I'll share right now, is that, sorry, I'm coughing like a madman. Just begin with the end in mind. When I look at businesses, I think about who I'm going to sell them to on the back end before I get into it. Knowing that there's people like me or others that would buy the business from me in the future, and what they might buy it for, and what things I might do to improve the business, to make it more attractive to them. Pretty simple. Begin with the end in mind and methodically work backwards from there. So concrete example, that business in particular was making a lot of money. It was very profitable. It was a good business. Its scheduling was done out of, and then this business had trucks and technicians. So it was a very operationally heavy business. Trucks on the road, guys in the trucks doing work. It was run from a scheduling standpoint with paper and pencil out of a red book, right? I saw a way to improve it once I really got in there and understood what the business was about, was to, utilize field service management software for two reasons. One, it would lead to operational efficiencies, which would probably drive better EBITDA margins, better profit margins. Secondly, it would make the business more transparent, which would make it more appealing to the kind of individuals and entities that would eventually want to purchase it. And in the case of that business, the entity that did purchase it was utilizing the same field service management, which was no mistake. I diligenced that as part of the process. So begin with the end in mind is the key tenet to being successful in these endeavors.
Did you have to grow a team, or just placing the management system to streamline the operations?
Everything. I grew the team. I optimized processes. I added more processes. The key part is that during diligence and during research, you look for the low-hanging fruit, right? You find areas that you think you can improve in the business, and you make your hypothesis based on that. Then you actually get in the business. Oftentimes you find out that things may not be the way that they were initially advertised, right? And then you learn more, then you decide what you actually want to do. And some of your ideas will be validated. Some of your ideas, won't be validated, but that's how you get in and do it.
So how long did it take you to, once you decided to put it on the market, how long did it take you to actually exit? What that transition looked like?
Well, if you read the book, you know that I didn't actually put it on the market. I just simply, I got a sense of what I thought the business was worth. And then I had a buyer in mind that I knew like businesses like this. And I was thinking about doing a ESOP sale, employee ownership. I decided not to because ESOPs are complex. And even though, sorry, I'm coughing a lot.
It's all right.
ESOPs are complex, and even though, given the way that you can finance them, ESOPs are great. If you don't like taxes, ESOPs are the best thing since sliced bread, because you can actually do a transaction where you as a seller don't pay taxes, but more importantly, ESOPs are the only debt form that I know of in the history in the US, certainly. I don't know of one even in a different country where you can structure an ESOP so that the principal debt payment is pre-tax. Not interest, but principal and interest both are pre-tax. So I had this really cool ESOP transaction set up that I got approved by an SBA 7A ESOP transaction that I got approved through a lender's credit committee that actually would have allowed me to sell the business. But because of the tax structure to it and the debt payments being tax-free, would have increased the cash flow to the business because the business was levered up when I bought it. Even though the debt payments themselves were higher and the debt amount, as the debt was bigger, the interest was higher, so the payments were bigger. Because of that tax optimization, just by pure ESOP financing, I could have improved cash flows of the business and I could monetize how much it costs to hire someone to manage an ESOP and this and that. I decided that employee ownership was just too much of a bureaucratic, it would have potentially slowed operations of the business. So anyways, but I also could value what employee ownership was like for the team members. What I decided might be more valuable than employee ownership was just big retention bonuses. So what I did is I reached out to a buyer and I asked him for a purchase price that was significant and they agreed to it. And I grew the business even more from the time that we agreed to that price and the deal got closed. And here I am today. So.
Wow, pretty cool. It's interesting. So again, having the end in mind kind of helped you to get to this place. You knew that that's how it would transpire.
Yep, Stephen Covey had it right. Began with the end in mind.
Yeah. Awesome. So Reid, you want to share anything as last words before we close the show and also share how people can get in touch with you and what your ask is?
Yeah, the way to get in touch with me is I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so feel free to follow me there and buy the book. Grit It Done is the name. You can get it at grititdone.com or on Amazon. It's literally everything that I know packed into 200 pages in 3 hours. And I'm just stoked that you had me on the show today. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. We'll include those links in the description below the show for everybody to access. Look forward to checking your book out as well.